this. Richard, in just to recap, in our last episode, your first debut episode of Wealth Management, Living Again Post-Pandemic, your show, we talked a lot about, being hopeful.
Yeah, well, hi Vicky, it's great to be back again for the second episode. You talk about the future. I think one of the innate things in human and man is hope. And we always, I believe, hope for a better future, whether it's for ourselves, whether it's for our children. And this is something that helps to drive us and to keep us going. Life is always going to throw up challenges. If we believe that life is just going to be smooth and plain sailing, maybe we're setting ourselves up for discomfort and
unexpected twists and turns.
Yeah, these are going to be part and parcel, and we need to realize that. And one of my mantras is to live life to the full. A simple mantra that is something that I like to live by on a daily basis. And the day that I'm on my deathbed, I'd like to feel that I can look back over my life and felt that I tried to do everything I could, tried to achieve everything with the God-given talents I've been given, and lead a fulfilling life.
Yes, and Richard, I do know that you have been living in Singapore for the last 20 years, and your children, in your last episode, you talked about the third culture. What's your aspirations for your children as a father? You have traveled around the world, you've backpacked. What's your aspiration for that generation?
My aspiration for my children is that they can fulfill their dreams. I'm not the kind of parent that is going to say, this is the path that you must take, because if it's not the one that they are motivated to do, at some stage they'll find another path, and they may have wasted many, many years. So I'm very much want to encourage them to find their way in life, to navigate the challenges of life. But, very often I will say to them, ask yourself the question, why? Why is this important? Why is this that, what is it about this that motivates you? In life, I feel that if you can find something that you are passionate about, something that you are willing to work hard at, and that you have talent, if you can combine those three things, almost certainly you're going to succeed.
And Richard, where we are in Singapore right now, and a lot of viewers and listeners are all over the world, especially in America, or tune into my shows. In Singapore, there's such a culture where, parents are always trying to dictate what their children should be doing, should be studying, and it is so common, or just really cultural here, that you've got a parent to say that, hey, you need to take the A maths, the additional mathematics, you need to take the pure chemistry, you need to take the biology because you're going to lead you to medicine, or you're going to take literature because you have a path in the degree of law, etc. How do you manage that amidst your children's struggle, because they are in the midst of Singaporean children who are pressured by Singaporean families or mothers or fathers?
They go through the same challenges, because as anybody knows who's gone through a local education system, it's very taxing, it can be very stressful, albeit a very good education system. And I think some parents, though, they want to live their dreams through their children, rather than let their children fulfill their dreams, and not end up that the child resents going down a path to please their parents when it was something that they have no motivation or passion for whatsoever.
But how do you do it? Because I'm very sure your children will be pressured, right? When they have their friends and and they will be saying, hey, you know, my friends are going to go to this school because they want to go to the best, like the top schools and, you know, the rankings. Do they ever feel pressured? And how do you navigate their emotions? How did you balance their mind to tell them that, hey, it's okay, we're not going to like pressure you? Or how do you actually operationalize on that level? That's
I'll give you an example. Just last week, I was speaking with my youngest daughter. She's just coming up to 14 years old. She's coming up to the end of secondary 2 year, and she's having to choose what subjects she wants to go into. And she loves art. She really likes art. She's good at art. She's passionate about art. And, you know, I've said to her, follow your dreams, get some balance in the choice of your subjects. So it's not just all arts, although actually in Singapore, the minority of subjects is in the arts, but, you know, get a balance in life and choose something that you're passionate about. I said to her that too often here in Singapore, people are looking at what grade can I get when I take my exam. And I actually said to her, listen, yes, getting a grade is good, and do your best to get the best grades, but a good rounded education isn't just about getting a good grade, it is about educating a mind and how that child's mind is able to think, how is it able to reason, how is it able to question the world around them, which ultimately is going to help them navigate life much more so than drumming out robots that might be getting lots of A's but have no interpersonal skills or artistic flair.
Do you ever feel the pressure yourself?
There is, but quite frankly, it's a bit of a water on a duck's back with me. You know, you mentioned that I come from Oxford, and actually I was surrounded by Oxford academia. My father was a professor, my godfather was a professor in the sciences, and I was a little bit of the black sheep of the family. But I think that, you know, when I look at many of the students my father would teach, and I met up with a lot of them during student parties, they were exceptionally bright people. But didn't always have the communication skills or the street smart skills to be able to operate in the general world. They were great in the world of academia, but not necessarily, you know, when communicating or motivating other people around them. So there are different kinds of intelligence, and not everybody is cut out to be an academic. And this is what I'm saying to my children, that do your best, because having a good education is a hugely valuable asset. But just getting an education for the sake of getting good grades is very often missing the boat.
Yeah, and you know, now that we're talking about your business here at One Global, and I did search about One Global. You are an offshoot of another, I should say, the headquarters is located in Hong Kong, am I right? Would you tell us a little bit about One Global? This career that you have charted that is so different from what your dad has envisaged for you, I guess.
Very much so, yes. He was a professor of biochemistry, so miles away from real estate investment.
I mean, I failed in chemistry, right, at age of 15.
Right. Well, when he used to try and teach me, he was way over my head, and I would just get lost. I just want to go and have a one-word yes or no answer, Dad, and two hours later, I'll be completely confused.
I couldn't even pronounce the words. They're kind of like. And then you got to kind of like get your spelling correct, right?
Sure.
If you don't get it right, it means another thing.
Yes, exactly.
You don't want to be poisoning people at the end.
Yes, yeah.
Tell us about One Global and this setup that you have and the hierarchical company of your company.
Sure. Well, just to let you know, the head office is actually here in Singapore. We have a lovely converted shop house unit at 127 Devonshire Road. We have offices in Hong Kong, KL, Malaysia,
I see.
Middle East, South Africa, London. And the company really provides a great end-to-end service. So for anybody who wants to add international real estate to their investment portfolio, but they just don't know how to get started, or they feel that because it's overseas, they're not familiar with it. How do I get a mortgage? Who's going to manage my property? How do I know it's a good investment? Natural concerns that sometimes create barriers to entry.
Yes.
And what we have done is basically line up all the ducks and put the solutions in place to provide a complete end-to-end service, to provide a solution to every touch point throughout the investment life cycle, from finding the right property that suits your investment goals all the way through to selling the property at some stage in the future when you wish to take back your profits.
Yes, and that's a good introduction about your company. And today we'll try to cover as much as possible. For myself, I'm really interested in real estate. That's why I have been in France for the last 7 years. Ladies and gentlemen, you will hear in the next 20 minutes about perceived barriers of entry. About this is what Richard talked about. Who's going to look after the property, and probably Richard can give a specific example, a specific scenario, a specific project that your company is currently doing. How do you or how does someone like a Singaporean go about investing in it, and how do you as a company take care of that project? And also about emotional investing versus research-driven investing is something that I like. And start with clarifying your investment goals.
Well, that's where it starts. Whenever I meet up with a client, it's very much about tailoring the right solution for the client. Each client's investment goals or aspirations can be different. And so the more clear that those goals are, the easier it is for me to advise that client. And so before even talking about a country, a city, a specific neighborhood to invest, let's get clarity on those investment goals, because unless we get clarity, then it's like, if we don't have a plan, well, any path will do. And so my way of working with a client is to clearly understand what are the investment goals. And I should say that probably 90% of the clients, it is an investment decision. And what I mean by that is they're investing in a property in an asset class that's going to help them grow their net worth. For our minority, and we still serve these profile of clients, people may be buying a property more for an emotional reason because it is a holiday home or it's a retirement home. It's not always driven purely by the numbers and the return on investment. So let's get clear on those investment goals first, and then what we will do is look at the right property. Now, One Global has a large property portfolio in multiple countries, particularly strong in the UK with multiple cities that we cover. But we will source developments with top tier developers. And this is very important, because the last thing that you ever want to do is invest in a property and the developer goes bust and the property doesn't get built. That's no good for anybody. So part of the due diligence process that we have, and because we're licensed by the Council of Estate Agents here in Singapore, we legally are bound to doing thorough due diligence to mitigate as much as possible the risks of investing with a rogue developer that doesn't deliver. So many of the developers that we work with are public listed companies. They're major players in real estate, which helps to reduce the likelihood of a default happening. And once we've then found the right property for the investor, we guide them through literally holding their hand through the whole journey. So that will start with introducing them to a panel of lawyers to get the conveyancing started. We'll introduce them to our mortgage brokers so that they can apply and make sure that they can get financing on the property. And if it's an off-plan property, that is to say it's in the process of being built, when it gets to completion, or in Singapore jargon, TOP, as it gets close to that point, we'll introduce them to our property management companies, which will do everything from handing over the property from the developer to make sure that there are no defects, marketing the property to tenants, screening those tenants, signing the lease agreement with the tenants, collecting the rent, all the way through to selling that property at some stage in the future.
And a couple of questions that you've packed a lot in that we could try to unpack a little bit further. Richard, I think it's exciting because you're talking about, like what you say, there are different categories of investors who are looking for different things. Some are pure ROI, some are ROI plus other soft factors. And could you define the character of One Global? I'm looking at it as it is an investment financial consulting company. Am I right?
Well, yes, it is. We work very much in a consultative approach to help clients, again, clearly define their investment goals and then match those investment goals with the right solution or the right property. Due to licensing as well, we are a licensed real estate agency here in Singapore. We have to be licensed in order to be able to do our
business. A global project. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like if you do go to one of these agents in Singapore, they are not licensed to do any projects out of the territory of Singapore. Am I right?
Well, you have to have a real estate license to be able to sell, whether it's locally or overseas. But if you're going to market properties that are overseas, then there's additional layers of due diligence that we have to do on the developer, again, to reduce the risk, so that if a person who resides here in Singapore invests, we have done everything we possibly can to reduce the chance that something goes wrong along the way. It's nothing is guaranteed, but by having these extra check boxes that we have to comply with by law, again, it helps to reduce the likelihood of something going wrong along the way. And unfortunately, in real estate, there are, like I suppose in any industry, there are rogue developers, and there are times where people have had a bad experience, and it's very sad, and I can understand these people who've been burnt are very cautious moving forwards. I would just like to encourage that if they have had a challenge, I'm sorry to hear that, but I would like to encourage them to have a chat so that, one, we can build up a level of trust, but two, to go through the due diligence process to help give them some peace of mind if they do wish to reconsider investing in overseas property again.
Yeah, Richard, we've got to know you through our last episode and this episode, and I'd like to get to know One Global a little bit more. And I think you're right. There are people who were burned when there was a hype about investing in Myanmar. Like some 5 years ago, there was a hype about investing in China. And I'm not particularly talking about this country or that. Is no discrimination. I'm talking about when people just go with the hype, what they read on the newspaper, right? When we're talking about Myanmar, you've got Aung San Suu Kyi. She was being released, and it was a big hype, and people just rushed in, right? People talked about, oh, the economy is going to be good, and I foresee that, and I was presented opportunities with that. Myself, and also numerous opportunities since the early 2000s about investing in various countries, probably like in China. I'm just saying, for an example, okay, in Bangkok, etc. I think there is a risk when we do not do enough of professional due diligence wherever it is. If the project is in Germany, right? It looks good on paper, right? You've been presented with something. I mean, I've been presented with so many opportunities in Australia. That the person called One Global Service, I'm looking at One Global as an entity, as a living person, holds with it the kind of philosophy, the kind of values that the company embraces about the relationship between the company and the client. And you have been trying to clarify, yes, this is what we do, and this is the assurance that we give, because we need to check the boxes and make sure that whatever project we bring and represent, they must have cleared the bar with us first. Am I right? Can you clarify that?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to really risk and reward. If you are investing in an emerging market, then there are other risks. There are political risk, there's currency risk. How strong is the rule of law? Can you enforce a contract in that country if the developer goes rogue? Is there a change in legislation that suddenly overnight can mean that it's killed the deal? So at the end of the day, risk reward is very important. And on one side, depending on your risk profile and exposure to risk, one person might say, well, look, yes, I'm very aggressive. I don't mind going into high risk, but know the facts is that potentially you might invest into an emerging market, and who knows, potentially you might make a great capital gain. But conversely, if something goes wrong, how do you protect your downside? Because you could lose everything. And what we've discovered over the years with the profile of clients that we generally service is that clients would rather have a safe haven market where we see good, steady growth over a medium to long term, as opposed to trying to become a millionaire overnight and investing into an emerging market that potentially could give you higher returns, but potentially, could lose everything. So this is part of the process when speaking with a client. One of the questions I'll ask is, what is your risk profile? Would you define yourself as aggressive, moderate, or conservative? How do you see real estate fitting into your investment portfolio? Would you like to take a more conservative approach because other parts of your investment portfolio are more aggressive, and get some balance within that investment portfolio? And where does real estate sit in that?
And I looked at your projects here at One Triangle. Would you like to walk us through this flow of process? Like, for example, I come into your webinar or your seminar at the Four Seasons Hotel, or on Zoom webinar, and you've got a project, right? Walk us through very quickly, like your 10-step kind of process for someone like myself.
Sure. Well, first of all, before we even look at a specific project, what we'll do is analysis and due diligence on, is there a strong investment case? First of all, that country. So we look at the macros. Is there political stability? Is there currency stability? Is there a good rule of law? What is the overall supply demand of that country? And then we start to zoom in on a city, and then we start to zoom in on a neighborhood. And we'll look for a variety of things.
Okay, before we go into that, I think this is so interesting. And it's so interesting for potential clients of yours to know actually the process of you shortlisting a project that you would like to represent. Am I right? So I think that process gives someone like myself the kind of assurance. Like, for example, you've got this One Triangle project from Ashford, and then you've got another project, Ashford, Kent. You've got another project around the Triangle. Now, how do you exactly do that, like shortlisting that and doing that due diligence? Like you with your board of directors come in to say that, hey, we've got like 10 projects, but out of 10 projects, we shortlist 3, and out of 3, we only take 2. How does it go? I mean, for it to make it the mark.
Yeah, it starts at a higher level. So we're looking, so let's say we're looking at Ashford. Ashford is one of the best connected commuter belt towns just outside of London. And we've seen through the pandemic that there's been a migration from city centre living to the suburbs and commuter belt towns. So we've seen that the growth rate has been extremely strong in these kind of commuter belt towns. So there are many commuter belt towns around London. So let's look at not just the average. Let's find a commuter belt town that's going to outperform average. Otherwise, why use one global?
Yeah.
So we then start looking, well, what is the, let's say, starting off with things like, what is the supply demand? What is the population growth? Those are two things that go hand in hand. If you've got an undersupply on one hand and you've got population growth on the other, it's a double whammer, and almost certainly there is going to be growth, because when demand outstrips supply, whether that's because there's an undersupply or overpopulated area, then prices will go up. So these are some key things. What is the regeneration that's going on that's going to be adding value to that town? What is the employment like in that town or that suburb? You want places where there is high rates of employment. What is the connectivity? So with Ashford, one of the great pluses of this town, and why we chose this over other commuter belt towns, is that it's not only connected to London in 29 minutes on British Rail, but it's also connected on the Eurostar, which is the train system that allows you to travel at high speed in under 2 hours to Paris, and about an hour and a half to Brussels, and also to Amsterdam. So if you're living in Ashford, you can be in 4 major cities within a few minutes. And the project that we have, called the Triangle, is literally just 10 minutes walk from the train station. And it sits right beside a beautiful park and river, which is what people are looking for. You know, an interesting statistic that came out from one of my colleagues recently in another seminar was that pre-COVID, the number one reason that somebody chose to live in a particular apartment or home was its proximity to public transport, and the second was proximity to where people work. Now, when we look at what is the main driver for people choosing a property, it's actually accessibility to open parkland and open space. And so what we've seen in the space of 18 months is people have radically changed what they need in a home, and they're looking for more space. They're looking for somewhere that's got an additional room or a home office that they can work from, because they may be working full or part-time from home, and they want to be able to access open space and greenery so that they can get out and exercise, you know, if additional lockdowns or restrictions come up in the future.
So that's hashtag need for space. Go to Ashford. You know,
well,
Richard,
you just get more bang for your buck. It's, you know, the average price of property is 39% cheaper than the average property in London.
And and I'm looking at the numbers that you have given me, the growth numbers, and also some of these, I should say, ROIs also. Are you able to run with us? What's that potential range of investment into this project of Ashford, Kent, which I will show in the picture a little bit later on. What's that price range? How do they get the loan? Like, go through that 10-step process or shorter, and then what's that return on investment?
Right. Well, starting with the mortgage and getting access to financing, again, part of the process is, before I even talk about zooming in on a particular investment, let's get at some confidence around whether you're going to be eligible for a mortgage.
Yes.
Before even signing or reserving a property, what I'll do is I will put them in touch with one of our mortgage brokers. And the mortgage broker will go through a thorough fact find, and they will come back to them usually within 2 or 3 days to say, yes, based on the information you've provided, you're going to be eligible for a mortgage. So at least they've got some comfort that they are eligible. It's not a mortgage offer, but at least they've got some comfort around the fact that they should be eligible, as long as their financial situation doesn't change. When it comes,
walk us through a little bit about this process, because I do know that you know, a lot of local banks do not give out loans for projects outside Singapore. We're talking about UOB. You know, we're even talking about HSBC. They don't do that. How does one get that mortgage from you or from one of your brokers?
Sure. Well, local banks, UOB, OCBC, and so on, they will tend to lend in prime central London. And the reason
1 and 2,
being,
right?
yeah, what we call zones 1, 2, and maybe even out to zone 3.
Yeah.
And the reason being is that because they're Singapore banks, they're not so familiar with the market in the UK. So they have offices in the centre of London, and typically they feel comfortable to lend on property in the centre of London. But when we work with a mortgage broker, they have access to over 200 lenders in the UK. And this gives you access to a far greater range of products.
Wow.
And it may be that you think that I can't qualify for a mortgage, but you'll be amazed that different banks have different criteria, and the mortgage broker knows this. And so the value of using a mortgage broker is that they have these relationships with these banks. They know how to prepare the mortgage applications. They know the do's and don'ts, and they know which lender is more likely to lend based on your profile. So
can I say that we are really, One Global is actually the, I should say, the door to go to the door towards getting that mortgage for that dream investment, right? Whatever investment that is, and that's something that we don't have in Singapore, because we can't go to a bank. We can't go to HSBC, not even HSBC Global, because I've done that before. That's why I'm in France. You know, I got my French cards and all this. You got to deal with the local there. So for One Global Property Services, you actually cut short that whole search journey by having your so-called collaborators already there with you.
Of course. I mean, time is money at the end of the day, and
you don't have to go there, right?
You know, one of the value adds is that what we will do is guide a client through the whole process. We've done it for thousands of clients, and what this does is it saves a huge amount of time. If you want to go and fly around the world and do all your due diligence, of course, you're more than welcome to do so.
I've done it for 7 years.
That takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of money.
Sure.
You know, if you, as we build up a level of trust with our clients, what we're doing is we have professional people that are doing that on your behalf. So it's saving you a lot of time and travel. And all the other moving parts, we provide this one-stop shop solution, so that rather than kind of getting stuck, how do I find a mortgage, or where's the right, or who's the right lawyer to use, or who's going to rent out my property? This is a big thing for Singaporeans, because here in Singapore, because it's such a small place, many landlords actually rent out their own properties, or they have a local agent that is not a professional property manager, but will do it kind of as a favor to keep the relationship going. Whereas in many other countries around the world, there are professional property management companies, and that is their business, to manage the property. They take a percentage of the monthly rental, but it means that you have peace of mind that your asset, your property, is being professionally managed, which is thousands of miles away.
Yeah, and it's well maintained. They make sure it's cleaned up when there is a change of your tenancy, and they make sure the water, the bills, the structure, when there's a problem with insurance, they come right in. So you have that level of assurance, because you're dealing with people who are professionals on the other side. So it's almost like putting the money in a bank, right? But it is like putting the money in a real estate project. Am I right, Richard?
Well, I think many people invest in real estate because it's something that they can understand. It's very tangible. And once you've bought the property, then the property typically takes care of itself. You've got a tenant in there that is paying the rent. In the UK, we can get what we call interest-only mortgages, and that means that your property is almost certainly going to be cash flow positive every single month. So you've got this cash cow generating you income, and over the medium to long term, the value of the property goes up. And because most people live in a property, they've probably gone through buying their own property at some stage. It's something that they understand. It resonates with many people. And I think this is why property still for Singaporeans and many people around the world is very often the preferred asset class to grow their wealth in.
Richard, could you run through some basic ROI numbers and the range of investment for a first-time non-experienced investor for UK?
Sure. So when we look at return on investment, my definition is, you know, how much money and capital have I put into this property as a deposit? And then when I come to sell it at the end, you know, what return have I made on my capital? So just to take a very simple example, if I bought a property in cash, that is, I didn't get a mortgage, I bought it 100% in cash. Let's say it's $100,000, just to make it a nice, easy round number. And I sell that property in 10 years' time, and it had doubled in price. So I'm now selling at $200,000. I've made 100% return on my investment. Now, if you want to increase your return on investment, actually borrowing, which sometimes in Asia and certain countries is seen as a bad word. No, you know, some people in certain cultures don't like to take on debt. They want to pay everything in cash. There is good debt and there's bad debt. And when you can get financing,
why not?
The country sometimes for as little as 1%. Then why not leverage? Because imagine you had 100,000, but this time what you do is you buy 2 properties and you put 50,000 deposit on each property. Both of the prices of those properties were $100,000. And again, let's take the same scenario that in 10 years' time, they both double in price. So once I've paid back the money to the bank, I've sold 2 properties now for 200,000. So that's a total combined of 400,000. I need to pay back the bank 100,000 that I borrowed. I've actually made 200,000 profit, or I've made a 200%
That's a no-brainer,
return
right?
on my investment.
So
I just mentioned that because that shows the power of leverage and why when investing in real estate, you can get good, attractive financing terms, and the interest rates around the world are at an all-time low at the moment for many countries. Why not leverage? Because that's going to increase your ROI or your returns. So when it comes to countries like the UK, we are looking at a property where we could get 65 to 70% loan to value, and we hold that property for 10 years and then look to sell. The projected return on investments are around about 150 to 200%. That's over a 10-year period. If you annualize that, then we're looking at about a 15 to 20% annualized return each year. So my question then to a client is to say, well, look, if this is a guideline, of course, at 15 to 20% annualized returns, and it's in a safe haven market, a country like, let's say, the UK with a strong rule of law, you know, a stable political system, a place that people would say is a safe haven. You know, what kind of investments are you normally having to invest in to try and get a 15 to 20% annualized return? Normally, it's a high-risk, volatile investment vehicle. So the power of leverage allows you to still invest into a safe haven country and a safe haven asset class, but that leverage can give you very attractive return on investment.
Wow, that really excites me. You know, I can hardly like sit still on my chair. Like Richard, tell us more about this project that you have that's in your hands that you have shortlisted because it meets your mark about Ashford. It looks good because I'm looking at the picture. It's like a 10-story building. Are they? You've got quite a few projects in Ashford, or are they the one project?
Well, this is our second one in Ashford, and we are looking to do more over time because we see it as a very strong investment case for some of the reasons that I've mentioned earlier, but there's a lot more to Ashford than what I've already said. But it's a great development, 143 units, literally, as I mentioned, right next to Victoria Park and the River Stour. You're a 4-minute walk to Elwick Place, which is the local shopping mall and leisure centre with gyms, cinemas, bars, restaurants. You have something called the Curious Brewery, which is a huge brewery. Ashford is in the county that's called Kent, and it's often known as the Garden of England.
Yes.
And although you lived in Bordeaux, where it's famous for winemaking, and I perhaps won't compare with Bordeaux, but the winemaking region of England is in the county of Kent.
I see.
The Curious Brewery is kind of like a showroom for one of the major brewers of not only wine, but beers as well. That's a 4-minute walk away. The international station is 10 minutes away. The center of the town is 8 minutes away. It's got a great international college. It's recently just launched something called Network Town. And this is an old train station that's been renovated, investing over £250 million to make it into creative tech studios. And we've seen Amazon Prime, Netflix, and one other producer of content signing up their UK offices in Newtown Works, sorry. So it's a great place. It's got for those who need the retail therapy, it has a premium outlets. And those people who are not familiar with premium outlets, these are sort of designer shops, and it attracts over 3 million people every single year into the town of Ashford just to visit this one premium outlet shopping mall. So it's a real buzzing place. The population is estimated to be rising significantly. And that's causing a real crunch on the housing shortage. And within the last year or two, more and more people are looking for towns like Ashford because it's cheaper, they get more bang for their buck, but they can still connect into major cities because of the connectivity of the railway system.
Yeah, and you know, like in France, the studies have shown, or the statistics are that property or home ownership is 30%, it's 29.2%, and the rest of the people just rent. It is so different from like in Asia or in Singapore, whereby, you know, a lot of us in Singapore, 90% we are homeowners. You know, that's where the rental market is, because you've got a huge number of people queuing up for the apartment just to rent. What's the numbers like there in the UK or in
well, it's changed over time. The UK, I mean, there's a famous English saying that an Englishman's house is his castle. And like a lot of Singaporeans and quite a lot of Asians, people save up money to buy their first property and get on the housing ladder. I remember listening to a BBC story a few years ago, where 20 years ago, the average time it took for a graduate to get on their first property was about 3 to 4 years. So let's say that, you know, they graduate in the UK, 22 years old, they're looking at maybe 25, 26 to get on the property ladder. They were saying, this was about 2 years ago, that the average age is now 38. And it's predicted to go up to 42. And the reason being is that prices of property have gone up. Loans of value,
different economic
factors are now lesser. So rather than being able to get a 95% mortgage after the global financial crisis, which was driven partly by the housing issue, banks became much stricter on how much they will lend. And so now you might be talking 20, 30% deposit, and the young generation just don't have enough funds. So unfortunately, they are forced to rent. So I feel sorry for the young generation, because the only way that many of them can get onto the property ladder is through what we call the bank of mum and dad. And this is becoming a common term. The bank of mum and dad is having to help their kids get on that property ladder. Otherwise, they can end up renting. But the flip side of that is, if you're an investor, then having a massive pool of tenants is a good thing. And when there is a lack of property on the market, it means that when units come up, they get snapped up.
Sure, that's wonderful. And I've gotten you for almost 60 minutes. It's so interesting. It kind of like just went past like 5 minutes, because this is something so real and something so relevant to a lot of us. Richard, the final 30 seconds, are you able to wrap up about exiting the investment, and how do you actually go about like offloading this investment?
Well, we basically work with many real estate agencies across the UK. If you market a property at a fair market price, and you're in a market whereby there is an undersupply of property, you can always sell a property. If you're trying to market the property way above fair market value, and there's nothing unique about your property, don't be surprised if it sits on the market for a long time. So whatever the property is, if you market it at fair market value, you can always sell it. If you basically market it when it's undervalued, it'll get snapped up.
Sure.
Now, on top of that, because of the pandemic, the supply of property, not just in Ashford, but in many places across the UK, has become even more undersupplied. And the reason for that is that planning permission departments have been on furlough, so the planning approvals slowed down. Contractors often haven't been able to get on site, so projects have been delayed, which has meant there's been an even more pent-up demand. And because of the low interest rates, a temporary stamp duty holiday that was in the UK just recently, and the fact that people want to then take advantage of these factors to upgrade, has meant that there is just an absolute major supply. So prices are driving up, and when properties are on the market, they are getting snapped up these days.
Wow. So that's, ladies and gentlemen, very exciting future for a lot of us. You know, Richard has been so kind to spend the last 60 minutes to tell us about these dreams that we are all waiting to live again, you know, in UK. And Richard, you have a seminar coming up. I'm not quite sure if by the video, if it's released, we'll be able to catch that. But you know, you always have a lot of webinars, right? And what do you talk about in your webinars?
I do maybe 2 or 3 webinars or events every single month on different topics within the real estate and investment industry. As you mentioned, we have an event at the Four Seasons Hotel here in Singapore on November the 6th and 7th. So all are very welcome. You just need to email me. I'll be happy to forward you the details. My email address is richardlowe@ogpsglobal.com. Richard Lowe, that's L-O-W-E, that's my family name. Even though it sounds like on the screen. It sounds like an Asian name. But so Richard Lowe at ogpsglobal.com. I'd be more than happy to send you the details. We're having an event. It's basically a London workshop, and we're going to be having many guest speakers, not just myself, on multiple topics over the weekend, on different aspects of investing in the real estate market. So you can actually kill many birds with one stone, because you can come and enjoy multiple events and learn a great deal with some real keynote experts in their field. So we've got people from mortgage brokers, tax consultants, talking about the market.
Coming in from the UK?
They're mainly based in this part of the world. They're expats living here, but servicing people in this part of the world.
Yep.
So it's going to be a great event if you wish to come along and learn about the real estate market. One of the topics I'm going to do, which will be quite interesting, is literally comparing the return on investment of investing in an entry-level property here in Singapore and an entry-level property in London. And you'll be amazed at the difference in the return on investment based on the amount of deposit, based on the loan to value, based on the stamp duty that you need to pay, and the kinds of mortgages you can get with interest only as opposed to principal and interest, the cash flow that then produces. So watch this space, come along, and you'll hear more about
sounds really exciting.
You know, pros and cons of investing in London and Singapore.
Yeah, you got it right there. They hit the nail on the head. That number one step is qualifying your client, right? You don't want to go through the whole process and then your client is not qualified for a particular mortgage, and the client has got to take out cash, etc. And then redesign the whole investment portfolio. Glad that you have got brokers there, and they're so important. They have such great expertise, right? I mean, they know exactly what the banks are doing, which banks require what papers. And the paper could be quite a lot, and they've got to qualify the first round themselves as the brokers, and then before presenting it to the banks. And they would kind of know, are you 90% assured that you can get your loan? So I think the brokers are important as in any form of investment. Thank you so much, Richard. I'm so excited for you, Richard.
Well, thank you for having me again. It's been a real pleasure.
And I'm just waiting for your webinars or seminars to go live so that people can watch wherever they are. One day, maybe soon, I'll see you and your experts live on YouTube or in your own podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, and that's very, very intense information from Richard, and from his explanation, you can see that he's someone who is a guru in investing in properties. You should go to him, and his email address is just repeated. Please go and click and jot down his email. And Richard, your videos are going to go to all podcast catchers in over 30 countries, and definitely the videos are going to go to US and a lot more podcast TV. I'm so glad to have you. You've given a great insight about UK. Definitely for myself, it's an eye-opener. I've never really considered that, but maybe we should. So Richard, any final 10 seconds to say before we say goodbye?
Yeah. The event that we're doing at this on November the 6th and 7th, if you're not physically here in Singapore, again, just email me and I'll be more than happy to forward you any of the seminars. We'll be recording them all. So again, just email me, Richard Lowe at ogpsglobal.com, and I'll be more than happy to send you the invitation, and we'll then forward you any of the recordings. So look forward to seeing you there, either in person or virtually at some stage. Thank you. And of course, because Richard, we are all in this digital immortal world for perpetuity. Now, if anyone missed any of these webinars or seminars, and if you're interested, you can always go to Richard. He's told us a lot about himself, his philosophy, and also One Global, what they stand for, the services that they provide. I hope you can go to them. And this is myself signing off from Singapore, and that's Richard Lowe. And we are broadcasting to you from Singapore to the rest of the world. Thank you so much, Richard. I look forward to seeing you again for the third episode of your show.